Well, hello, everyone, and how are you? We're back here on Community Conversations with Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with your host, Miss J. And we're going to be discussing what, again, always bringing topics that are local and global right here on this platform, making sure that we are doing what we need to do to impact change. Now, we've been talking a little bit about getting back to school, been talking about the kids and proper routines to get them in. And the one thing that we are going to circle back on today, which I'm really excited to talk about, is talking about something that impacts a lot of people, but doesn't get a lot of attention, and especially for children and youth. And what is that? Well, today's topic is a child's silent angst. Now, why is that important? Well, we know that social and emotional development is highly underrated, and it has such an impact on people's lives, especially our children and our youth. We don't see it sometimes, but today we're going to bring a little bit more attention to that topic. As always, I encourage you to dial in, send questions. If you're streaming live, if you're listening, feel free to contact us or email at info@lovebay@gmail.com. Now, I want to share a little bit of a statistic here. In 2023, there were some studies that showed that approximately 1 in 5 children experience a mental health disorder, which includes challenges with social and emotional skills. Now, today, we're not focusing on mental health, but we're focusing on the pre conditions that we're seeing or not seeing. And that's why I'm excited to bring on this guest today, because not only is she going to bring awareness to this topic, but she's going to show you some of the tips, tools, and techniques that she has been sharing with facilitators across North America in terms of how to ensure that your child is being supported. Children between the ages of 3 to 10 estimates that around 15 to 20% may display significant difficulties that impact their social interactions and their emotional regulation. Are they just having a temper tantrum? Are you seeing them being nervous to go to school? Are they coming home agitated? These are all little things that sometimes as parents, we overlook. We tend to think they're being dramatic or they're overemphasizing a situation. But in adults, we take it quite seriously. So I want to shine some light right here on our children. I want them to feel supported and be supported. But most importantly, parents, I want to help you to connect the dots when you see certain behaviors in place. Now, these challenges can really manifest into various forms. It can be anxiety, depression, or even behavioral disorders. So it's not something that we want to take light. It's essential that we refer to some of the studies or documents that are coming out on this, but I've done you one better. I'm bringing to the platform Miss Cameile Henry. She's a program coordinator and a professor of early childhood education. She has been working at, I'm going to say Sheridan College, if I'm saying that correctly. And as an ECE for 16 years, she's facilitated numerous learning opportunities for students and educators. Now, her interest in supporting children and families led her to work for an ECE and childcare centers with diverse children and families for over 20 years. And while pursuing those educational goals, Cameile became a foster parent as she wanted to continue supporting children who experienced trauma and stress. This experience invited over 15 foster children in her home. Who better to have here on our platform sharing how we can care and nurture our child's development while providing physical and social needs. Her latest endeavor is being part of the CEO of Strengthen Hands. And so I welcome to the stage Miss Cameile Henry.
Thank you very much,
Hello.
Miss J.
How are you today?
I'm fine, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this conversation.
I am so glad you are here because, as I've gotten to know you over time, it's been really exciting to see the work that you're doing currently and the work that is being done on a broader scale and how you're impacting and contributing to that. So what I know I gave the general bio of Cameile, but why don't you tell the people a little bit more around the Strengthen Hands concept and why you thought it was important to bring it into play?
Sure. Really, Strengthen Hands was really created through an endeavor of my brother-in-law and myself, really having a casual conversation to think about how best we can support children post-COVID. we really saw the challenges that were taking place in terms of social change, social awareness. And so we knew that children also were experiencing this. We're seeing children that were hesitant and nervous about, communicating with police officers, not sure how to navigate their own emotions that they were experiencing on a regular basis. And finding families weren't able, because they're also going through their own stress and trauma, to be able to support children in theirs. And so we thought, what can we do? We really wanted to be proactive instead of having a reactive stance. And so that's when we decided to create a series of children's books that really affirm and empower children to help engage in those conversations as they go through their emotional journeys. We also have several resources that we've had journals that have been published as well. And I'm really excited to share that our newest piece is a textbook that talks about this in a little bit more detail.
Love it. And it's so I'm going to be full disclosure. I am affiliated with Cameile in a business capacity. And one of the things that I saw while helping her to develop her model was the age range that you took on.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people look at books and you just basically see colors and numbers and all the educational components. So why the focus on that 3 to 10-year-old age range?
I know it's so interesting that you're stating that. My brother-in-law, Dr. George Ashley, comes from a social work background. And so a lot of the things, when we were talking about the emotions of young children and their social development, he felt, well, there are strategies that we can put in place when children are 10 and older. And I was saying to him, it's much too late when you wait until they're 10 years old. When we're talking about areas of language, it's so interesting that people are like, oh yeah, as soon as the baby is born, I'm going to talk to them and cuddle them and have these conversations. Oh, even when they're in the belly, I'm going to play music. And there's all sorts of things that people do.
Right.
And I'm like, that's great, language development. And it really does foster those opportunities. But I don't understand why we don't place an importance on their social and emotional development. And so when you were sharing earlier on in your introduction about the importance of research and making sure that we're up to date on current research studies, Harvard University has a great many research studies that has to do with resilience and brain development. And one of the things that they often mention is the fact that if children are able to identify their emotions early in life, when they get older, their emotional development is stronger to be able to handle the stresses that come their way. And so we have to understand that as much as we see a child upset, you talked about a young child having, a tantrum. And we interpret that, oh my goodness, we see it reflected on us in the sense that, oh, everybody's going to say he's rude or she's rude or the child is not behaving or they're not able to manage and they're going to think I'm a terrible parent. But maybe in the moment, instead of us interpreting what might be the case, maybe it's a matter of actually tuning in to what is happening with the child at the time. Sometimes it's not because you just said no. It can be a compilation of many things that have contributed to their day that is now manifesting itself in this tantrum that they're having. And I think if we're able to spend time with the child, even as young as a small infant, just saying to them, they're crying because they're hungry. Oh, you must be so hungry. I'm going to go and get you that bottle. Giving them those words, it might seem like, well, they're only 2 months old, Cameile. What am I doing? But it's not a waste of time. It's really an important piece that helps them with their emotional development. So when they're 3, 4, and 5, they're able to articulate and share with you what they're experiencing as best they can.
And I think you're hitting it there. When we talk about the early implementation, we always say that a child's greatest learning curve is between the age of 0 and 5.
Yes.
Right? If you can get that in there between those 5 years, you pretty much have set a core foundation for whatever their future is going to look like. Their belief systems, their thought processes, their mental negative or positive mental attitudes. And you said something key there because yes, you say when they're pregnant, all of a sudden they're playing Beethoven, they're reading, Harvard textbooks, but then the kid comes out and they go through those formative years. and all of a sudden it's the terrible twos.
Yes.
They're, I don't know why they're always crying. And many parents just kind of forget about that aspect of the mental side. They go straight for physical needs, right? They want them to look cute, they have the best clothes, whatever the
Right.
case may be. And then as they get older and they're into the toddler phase, now we start seeing their little personalities come out. And many parents are not even aware that's what they are. They just
That's right.
naturally assume that they're just miserable, or they're just happy babies, or they're sad babies, which takes us to the first question I really want to talk around is, when should a parent be aware or concerned about maybe a possible, impact of that social or emotional piece that children are being challenged with?
Well, the social and emotional development, is really an ongoing piece. And I think when you're saying about children at 5 years old showcasing their personality, one of the things that we need to be aware of is that there's this thing called temperament. And
Mhm.
temperament is tied into your genes and your makeup. And that's something that is not necessarily subject to change. So there are children that are slow to warm up. There are children that are easygoing. And so that you can plan something with them spontaneously and they're gung-ho and ready to go. And then
Mhm.
there are those that are also difficult. And in their difficulty, it's not in the sense that they're trying to be difficult. It's just that they need more time in order to process what is happening. Um, One of the things that children need on a consistent basis is stability,
Mhm.
as well as predictability about what is happening in their day.
Yeah.
So, for example, I love surprises. I love surprises. So when somebody says, "Oh, Cameile, pack your bags and we're going to XYZ," I'm like, "Woo!" And I'm so excited. But in my mind, my reaction is that, but I need a moment to really process.
Right.
And I think sometimes with the diagnoses and the understanding of social and emotional development, we as parents need to take a step back and recognize this is the child. And it's not about us. It's not
Mhm.
about how we interpret this world. It's
Right.
more so this child is interpreting the world as best they can,
Mhm.
and how can we be a consistent support in the
Mm.
navigation of that?
Yeah.
And it's hard because at times we are so invested in this child that we have in our world that we want the best outcome for them, which is true, but the support that we need to give enables them to be able to counteract and manage what is happening in the world that they live in. But if we consistently make all the decisions for them, then they're not learning about resilience. They're not learning about their own emotions. They're just having everything told to them.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important when we're thinking about this age of the heightened awareness that we have of neurodiversity and children with autism and the spectrum of that, ADHD and the spectrum of that. There's even oppositional defiance disorder and the spectrum of that. Um, it's so quick to label this as rude and disbehavior. And like you're trying to shush the child down because you're so embarrassed. But recognize it's not about you. It's
Mhm.
about the child and how you can help them. And I think it's not the concern, because you will always have a concern for your child, no matter what it is.
Mhm.
I think the idea of we need to turn our concern into compassion for ourselves and compassion to the child that we are supporting.
Yeah.
And I think if we as a community was more compassionate, maybe then we would remove the stigma that's and biases that we have associated with these labels and just understand people are people and
Yes.
see them as an extension of ourselves as human beings, and how can we support. I think sometimes that's what's lacking.
And it moves from that word concern. I say change it to challenge. Challenge
Yes,
yourself as parents to open your mind, because sometimes you're running on the same belief systems that your parents instituted when you were a child, right? Like there's certain things that, yeah, you go on bad, Ole, come here, you're
yes,
getting licks, right? There was no
right,
conversation around how are you feeling, what are you feeling right now, why are you acting
no,
that way. It essentially just comes down to discipline, right? It needs discipline. It needs discipline. And sometimes in our culture, that is something that, yes, it plays off well in the long run because you grow
Right.
up with
I was just
a
going to
set of
say,
standards, right?
yes,
It's knowing when it's time for discipline and when it's time for exploration of your child's conversations. And I say this from 3 to 10, 10 plus. Like, I specialize in the youth sector, working with youth for 30 years. And one thing I keep telling parents is, don't forget when you were 15. Don't forget when you were 16.
right.
Don't forget when you were 12. You wanted to be free. You wanted to go out. You wanted to do this. You wanted to do that. And yes, now you may say, well, I know what happens when you go out, or if you're staying out too late, or but I say, but that's something that a child or a youth has to explore. That's
Yes.
something we've got to give that latitude for. And where the discipline is tight, that social and emotional piece is not, right? And it's be seen but not heard. It's go play with the kids downstairs. If something happens, don't let me come down there, and then
Right.
peace reigns, versus saying, let's walk through why you're feeling this way. Maybe, like you said, they're introverted. They got into a big group and no one's ever taught them. There's so many parents who bubble wrap their kids
Yes.
that those play dates hardly exist anymore. Like back in the day, we were just out in the street running till the lights came on, right? And we navigated through all of those little pieces because our parents were very community focused, right? You're in your neighborhood, everybody raised each other. It is what it is. But as the years have gone, I've seen the transition of kids who've been sheltered and routine to death. There's no free play, there's no structure, and they're doing it on their own. They don't have the ability to create those friendships or those meaningful relationships at an early age. And then they're thrown into school. Here you go.
Yes. And the school is supposed to fix it.
And the school's
But
supposed to.
and what you're saying in terms of that social element piece, what we're finding in research is that when youth are going out and exploring a job opportunity, the social emotional piece didn't disappear. It's
No.
still a very important component. There's so much stress and pressure on the cognitive intellectual piece.
Mm-hmm.
What is your IQ? How well did you do in this area? What
Right.
are your math scores? But as much as that is a point to play, because there's a point of being able to function at the job in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that. But then recognize you can also be trained on the job.
Yes.
But I can't train you in terms of how to be a friend.
Yes.
I can't train you on how to act in areas of kindness and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So emotional intelligence is actually getting higher and a higher rating because you have to fit into the clientele or the
Yep.
teamwork
Yep.
spirit
The
of the
environment.
place that you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And those who have a higher emotional intellect
Yes.
actually do exceptionally well, even if they don't necessarily have the cognitive piece.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We need children to actually be aware. We
Yeah.
need children to be kind and compassionate to others. And if we have early stages of that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the money, and here I am taking a little bit of a political stance, but instead of the money going towards preventative measures or reactive measures, pardon me, at when
Yeah.
they're like 16, 17, 18, oh, we need to
Thank
put this
you.
program in place and we're running to
Yeah.
put these band-aids on
Yeah.
those places. We actually need to put it into the early years sector so that they can have enriching, strong, positive experiences that
Yes.
actually negate what is happening, this trauma and stress to come. Because
Yeah.
guess what? I have the resilience to be able to deal and cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't spend the money in those areas and we don't think it's something of importance, then we do, as you said, Miss J, those traditional kind of concepts about children to see they're seen and not heard. Oh, you're such a good child. Why? Because I'm quiet and sitting in the corner? But you don't know, because I'm quiet and sitting in the corner, I could actually be dealing with an unsurmountable amount of stress and trauma, but I'm not articulating it. I don't know how to tell you that I'm scared, I'm frightened. I don't even know how to tell the difference between being excited and being frustrated. And so if we don't give the children those strategies and ideas and wordings for that, then what are we doing? And we have to recognize as well, in terms of neurodiversity, children are not all verbal.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't always tell you And so what we have is behavior where they're trying to show you the best
Yes.
way they can, because, hey, we all know if I sit there and I throw a toy or rip my book or tell you no or run away, I'm going to get attention. Might
Yes.
not be the best of
That's
intentions.
attention, but I'm gonna get
Nope.
it.
But I'm sure going to get attention.
And
And
it's the only way they
sometimes,
know.
right.
And it's only, and because a parent gives them that attention in a negative way.
Yes.
Look, let's just follow me for a pathway here.
Yeah.
A young girl starts, right? They show this negative attention. They move through youth. They show this negative attention. They're getting the attention. No one ever says to them, hey, you could get positive attention and get the same outcomes that you're looking for, which is attention.
Yes.
Let's fast forward to now they're adults and they're in relationships doing what? Doing the exact same thing, doing negative things
That's
just
right.
to get the attention of their mate. And then when it comes off negative, they don't understand how to process that it was their behavior.
That's
It was
right.
their lack of social or emotional intelligence that has led them to where they are in that situation. And those are things that we don't think far back. Like,
No.
when my kids were born, a lot of it was spent, especially with my older one, because he was big, right? I mean, he came almost 10 pounds. So he was always above average in height, above average in weight. If he pushed a kid, it was equivalent to him, a Mike Tyson knockout. And
Mhm.
it was showing him that, when you're in at school, some of the kids will pick on you or
Yes.
identify you because you're tall and you're athletic and you're strong. And so you have to understand that they're not trying to be mean to you, but they don't understand why you're so big and why they're not. And those just little simple things like that made him more comfortable. He came home and he says, "Mommy, I'm the tallest kid in the room." I said, "Yes, you are, honey. And your mommy's little millionaire maker for the contract in the NBA." Right? Let's insert young.
Yes.
Whatever
But
you
it is.
you're going to be a millionaire. But let's see for where we could use this height, right? But you know what I mean. But if you and I want to turn this right into a bit of your story, because here we are talking about how we're maybe not identifying what a child's needs are.
Yes.
You became a foster parent and took in over 15 children. Now, I love to boast that I've worked with youth for over 30 years in my community, but honey, very few came home, honey, with a 24-hour care. Okay. So, that's amazing unto itself. And share with us a little bit as to the traumas and stresses that you saw the need, because it's funny how you say that. Most people take in for the physical side. They want them to have a good home, they want shelter, they want to feed them, they want to make sure they're getting a good education. But you came from a different perspective, which I thought was very interesting. Share a little bit of that with us.
Yes. So here I was, moved into a home where I had many rooms, and I felt if I was able to have something, it doesn't make sense that it's existing without having proper use. I think my role as jumping in as an early childhood educator afforded me an opportunity to see and understand children from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been in spaces where children would come up to me and talk to me. I'm the one in the grocery store where your child is waving. And I think that's what pulled me to be an educator, because I found I was in a space where children weren't necessarily judging me, but they were very open to inviting me into their spaces. And so I felt it should only be reciprocal that I'm able to do that for a child who might be struggling or facing some kind of challenge in some way. So here I was. My mom had fostered children in her time, and I had the opportunity to also do this again. I may have had more than she did, but I
Just sad.
but I did see it. And what I found is that when children were coming into my spaces, the social workers would be able to identify a few things from what they were seeing on the surface.
Right.
But the opportunity of being with a child on an everyday basis is one thing that you can't take away, is the building of a relationship. A building of a relationship affords you an opportunity for children to disclose in a way, because there's a trusting space for them.
Mhm.
And what I found was I would always be surprised that I would get a few surface details, but what I was seeing from the child in their behavior was telling me so much more.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, just my understanding and work of child development, of the importance of watching children engage in play where they tend to disclose and share aspects of themselves, recognizing that I'm not here to take over in terms of not saying I'm replacing your parent, but I'm here supporting you in your journey. Um, Being able to showcase that for children. I mean, I had children as young as a few days old
Wow.
to being up to like 12 days, 12 years old. So I was very much aware of
Mhm.
challenges that children would face and be able to support them in their stresses, witnessing their stresses,
Mhm.
understanding their stresses, recognizing that you can't apply the same tool to the same child, even if they're in the same family. You just can't.
Yeah.
So it's the
Yeah.
uniqueness of building unique relationships with each child that crosses your way. And it allowed me in the process of doing that to recognize, okay, I need to take a step back. It's not about me.
Mhm.
Um, and what can I give to children so that they can do better in their spaces. And that's like 15 years later, but it also resulted in a fantastic outcome where my son was with me when he was 2 weeks old. And now he's my son and he's
Oh,
11. So I've adopted through the
wow.
process of foster care, and it's really exciting, and it's a journey, let me tell you. It's a journey,
I
it's
can
a
only
real
imagine.
journey,
Yeah, I can only imagine.
to adopt children and to be in their space and be able to support them. I think um he's my family, but at the same time, I think for me, I'm learning from him so much.
Mhm.
As much as I'm able to give to him, he gives me so much back in multiple ways, right?
Love
And I
that.
think that's the uniqueness of that.
I tell you, like it's, you have to be a special person to expend that level of energy to help, take on a child day in and day out. And it leads me to my next question for you because you're a facilitator. You've been across the states, especially you've been getting a
Yes.
lot of contacts in the states who are asking you to come out and talk to their facilitators, to their ECE workers, to social workers. How does that experience of raising children and having such a wide gambit, how's that helping you to help them to identify, where a child's needs are?
I think one of the things that I enjoy about my experiences going to the US and speaking with social workers and different, like parents, social workers, we do things with children too. So um, it's been a wonderful space to be in.
Yeah.
But I think the experience that I have is it's kept me really humble. Um, as much as we have information, and I'm a bit of a scholar. I'm a college professor. So one of the,
A
I
bit.
guess it comes with the field
A
is
bit.
the fact that you research, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, sometimes you're like, let me go and find out more. So I can dig and dig and dig and do all sorts of research. But what I found is that people were coming up to us and we would share information. And I can give you the contextual information and the research of where it's from and why it's important, but it's very much also important to talk about the practical piece and my
Mhm.
experiences and stories. I think
Right.
people want to know when you lived it, you have a different
Yes.
way that you can speak as opposed to it just being something I research. And I'm not saying research is bad. Research
No.
is very much
It,
good.
it's not. It's textbook, right? But
Yes,
it's like what
but
they say, something
exactly.
you learn. Like I used to say, working in community for so long, I always tell people when I did a workshop is, listen, what I'm going to tell you, you won't find in a textbook
That's right.
because it's lived experience, right? And because textbooks are written in a certain era or time. and they become quickly irrelevant because the world changes so quickly, especially when you're working in human services. What today medically, you know, when they said, hey, Tylenol solves all, now that's not necessarily the case, right? Even when it comes to these disorders, syndromes, addictions, mental health, like the gambit has gone so broad because
Yeah.
everyone is so unique. And so I like the fact that you said building those unique relationships is something that I find a lot of professionals lack because they're not taught how to connect, right?
Yes.
They're taught that this is the child exhibits this is what they have, and then this is a textbook treatment for it, right? But it's not necessarily always the case.
But Miss J, I also wanted to say sometimes what we see exhibited in behavior, we assume one thing. So you're
Mm,
right. It's the textbook. It's the check mark. Oh, they're doing
yeah,
this. They're doing this.
yeah.
Oh, then this is what they have. But the thing is, sometimes what it is, it's the child is dealing with the stress and it's manifesting itself as
Mm-hmm.
something that
Right.
we classify. Let's say a oppositional defiance disorder. Oh, they're always so rude. Well, you know what? They're dealing with stress and they don't know how else to cope.
You're
And
right.
I think sometimes we as educators, as parents, those who work with children, take a step back, dig a little deeper. What's under the surface of the behavior that we're seeing exhibited? And it's the
Mhm.
same thing that when we're doing presentations and so forth, I want to get to know the people that I'm actually speaking to. It doesn't
Yes.
make sense that I'm giving this big, 30-minute speech and spending time with you. And then you're like, "Oh, she doesn't even know who I am."
Hmm.
So a lot of times in the beginning is really getting to know our audience and really hearing their challenges and being able to address some of those needs as best we can.
Love
Right.
that. Love that. Let's move a little bit back into the child realm now. Because we have parents listening here from all over the world, and guess what?
Yeah.
No matter where you live, no matter where you're born, a child's a child's a child, a youth is a youth, an adult is an adult, right? We all have life. Let's talk a little bit more around what are social and emotional intelligence. Like, can you give a little bit of a descriptor for those who may not be up to the
Yeah.
language, but can you just give a bit of a descriptor of that? And then I would love to touch a little bit on some of the things that if you notice what it could possibly be. We're not going to run through every scenario here because, we only have an hour, but I think it's important. She said, whip out the scroll. And so, child one. And
Yes.
I thought what you said was interesting before, just to tie it together was you said, in a family. So I really want the families, parents, I want you tuned in, facilitators, tune in again. You are here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're sitting here with Cameile. If you just joined us, Cameile Henry. She is the guru and CEO of Strengthen Hands. Yes, and she is helping parents, facilitators. If you are an organization, this is the person that you want to connect with. Today I have here talking about social and emotional intelligence and development. And the topic of our show today is called A Child's Silent Angst. Do we know what's going on in our children's world? Do we know what our children are facing? Are we the cause of some of these angst, and are we trying to help? And so tuning back into here, 5 o'clock each Sunday, we talk about topics that really impact us locally and globally. And so I love the fact that we have our guest here today talking about this very emotional topic and very stressful for a lot of parents because they don't know what to do because they don't know why it's happening. And so in this segment of the show, we're really going to be talking now about what is social and emotional intelligence. And let's dig a little deeper into what are some of the things that you can start to be aware of should you see your child acting this way. Not only can you get them diagnosed, but more so, how can you support their development? So Cameile, here's my question to you. Can you talk a little bit about what social and emotional intelligence is?
So, social and emotional intelligence is really having children understand their feelings and emotions, be able to identify them and classify them, and then be able to take the social realm in terms of connecting their emotions and understanding the emotions of others around them. When we think of the world in which we live in, it's so much importance for children to be able to connect and have relationships with others. And social and emotional development really plays a role in that. Being able to have compassion, empathy, building of resilience, all ties into social and emotional intelligence. Harvard research has actually stated that if a child has a significant person in their life that is able to help them on their emotional journey, a consistent person, a positive interaction, they actually, it increases their resiliency in their adulthood. And so it's really that emphasis of making sure, are we somebody that the child can go to, that they can have a sense of assurance? Sometimes in our world, especially as parents, we're so quick to judge behavior. And it's the idea of suspending that at times and being able to sit with children in the process of them processing their emotions that they're experiencing. Sometimes, we often go to the negative one. We say when children are angry, but angry is actually not necessarily negative. It's just how children express it that make us classify it as negative. Anger can be a motivator to make you want to be an advocate to promote for change. It just depends how you interpret it. And it's about all behavior needs to be managed to a degree. Even if in your excitement, I've been excited and I've been jumping up and down all over the place and screaming, it doesn't mean that that's appropriate for every place you go. You don't want to be in a bank and be jumping up and down and screaming, right? There's places where
you don't want to walk out after that. They might come rob you. Especially if they're not jumping up and down.
Exactly. So there's a time and a place for everything. And it's about being able to help children figure that out. One of the things I think we don't really, it was a little bit of an epiphany for me, and because we don't talk about it a lot, is the idea of brain development. And we often think, okay, you mentioned, Miss J, that your son was grown and very tall at a certain age. So I'm sure you thought, maybe people thought, oh, he's 12. He knows everything. He's good to go. And then be able to tell him all these things, and he's overwhelming his brain and information. And one of the things we need to understand is that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25.
Damn.
So here we are getting upset and frustrated at our 12 and 13-year-olds and telling them, well, you should know you need to be home at this time. Didn't I tell you this and that? And we're thinking, wait. I'm not saying that's an excuse for behavior, but I'm telling us to take a step back to say, wait a minute. They're only 13. Their brain is not fully developed yet. They're not even processing everything that we're telling them, because just because they look a certain way doesn't mean that they are expected to be these grown adults. That also, we as adults, let's be straight up. We make
Let's
mistakes.
be real. Let's be real.
We make mistakes too. We might be better at hiding them.
Or excusing them away, deflecting them, scapegoating them. Yeah, girl.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. But so then where's the same application to this, 7-year-old that we've told 4 times to put their socks in the dirty hamper bin and that they're still sitting there? So maybe it's about, you know what? I noticed that you still have the socks out. Do you need me to walk with you to take it? Yeah. Okay. So next time I just need you to remember. How can we do it? Put it closer so that you remember. Yeah. And I think it's about us being conscious of our temper.
Yeah. Be
conscious of our voice tone. And also just because we're in the same space doesn't mean we're present. And so it's very important. Are we present? We can't tell children to put away their phones and social media devices and so on if we're also doing this. And I think when we're thinking about the age that children are socialized, they're socialized with social media. And we need to get them back to the point where they're socializing with each other so that they can build those solid relationships that are reciprocal. It's great to have a reciprocal relationship so that what you're giving is also coming back.
That's it. And I think you said that right there. This day and age, it's easy now to shut your kid up with a phone, right? You pull up a channel, you pull up YouTube, or sometimes I see kids going through reels. I'm like, why are you even on Instagram?
Yes.
but that's a whole other show. We're gonna tackle that on another show. But it's that it's one way, and it's them feeding and they're taking. And you know what, parents, even some of the shows that your children are watching, what are the messages behind it?
Yeah.
What are the context behind it? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about one of the books on the wall there, because I think, I love Mina. That's one of my favorite characters, little Mina. But how did you use exactly what you're talking about to develop an author, the numerous amount of books she has? Let me just put it out there, people. She has about 21 books. And she said to me, I write children's books. And I'm like, okay, cool. We gonna make a business model out of this. And then I said to her, so which book? And she said, well, and she just started placing them down one by one. But what got my attention was just this series of things that you write about. And so let's move into that direction a little bit, because I think as you're talking to parents about, recognizing that a child is in a space, and in that space they're exhibiting a behavior, and this is what this behavior could possibly mean. How did you translate that into a book to help children to start to recognize? And feel free to pick up any one of those books that works for you.
I know, I have them.
You have a plethora, and if you can catch her on Amazon, people, check her out, or go straight to her website, www.strengthenhands.com, and get your copy. I kid you not. I'm in love with them. My children are grown, but I love every single one of them, because you know why? I wish I could use them to coach some of my CEOs, because they go through those little things, right? I mean, even as business owners, as parents, are we in touch with some of the things that we're feeling? So Cameile, get me one of those books, and let's talk the people through how your child can be taught, right? Because we spoke about recognition. We spoke about acknowledgement. Let's talk a little bit about how we now facilitate that learning.
Yes. And so really it is, the books were created as a strategy and support to families to really have conversations that can affirm and empower young children. When we're thinking about their social and emotional development, it almost feels like a roller coaster at sometimes. And you might try to figure out, okay, what should I talk to them about? But not necessarily having the resources in order to do it effectively. And so that was one thing that I personally struggled with, was that I was seeing my son going through a series of emotions, and almost in a sense having his emotions misinterpreted. And so I started off with the book, and it's called How Is Peter Feeling, which is a porcupine's emotional first day of school. And the uniqueness that is found within this book is that instead of it telling children how to feel or how they think Peter should feel, it invites children to look at the situations, the facial features that are also important in emotional and social development, to really understand what they think Peter is experiencing or feeling in the moments or the situations that are happening and transpiring in the story. So even for him, going to school the first day, riding on the school bus, bumping his head on the bus, sitting in the wrong seat, all of these things that he was experiencing actually culminate to the point where he has an explosive outpouring of his emotions in terms of anger, like a porcupine sticking up prickly, right? And I think like
how did you even think of that? Like, how did you? Okay, let's just take a moment here, people. How did you even relate to the child getting on the bus, sitting in the wrong seat, bumping their head, bumpy ride, and they explode? How did you even think of the porcupine being that representing factor?
You know, Miss J, it's so funny that you're probably like, a few people come up to me like, how do you think of these stories, right? And I think it's really what it is actually my experience working with young children, like you said, in the foster care, working in childcare before I became a college professor for well over 12 years, and then 16 years as a college professor. I know if you add that up, you could probably age me by now.
You're still 21, girl. Let's see. Let's go, honey. Old enough to drink. That's all we need to know.
I'm grateful for those experiences, because I've always taken a divergent path. My path has never been linear. And I think because my path has always been divergent, I've learned things along the way. And I wanted to get a book that children could really relate to. Most children, if they saw a porcupine, would be scared. And it's true. Like I would be, right? Because it's prickly. I don't want to touch it. And that's the idea. I don't want you to be scared of your feelings. And maybe we understood more what is under those feelings and the buildup of those feelings, then maybe it wouldn't be so scary. So that's how the porcupine came about.
Okay.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
With that porcupine, so can you just read a few pages? I just want them to get an essence, because I want you to show parents, I really want you to understand how easy this could be. Now, you don't have to be a facilitator, a professor.
No.
Or, you know, I mean, she's only 21, but you don't have to be a professor as long as Cameile to have impact in your children's life. I'm going to tell you that now, because I personally am not past 25. Thank you. But give a little excerpt from the book so that people can understand how the language. There's a word. Sorry, I am word scrambling today. The language that you could use to talk to children about a very complex piece.
So the first page is what I'll do. I'll do the first few pages. And it, it was the first day of school, and Mrs. Porcupine was helping Peter get ready for his special day. Peter was feeling a little, and then the blank is there so that then parents can actually fill in or stop. Actually, it invites parents to stop and actually engage children in the conversation. So what do you think Peter is feeling? You might be surprised, because you're thinking Peter might be feeling sad, and the look of what is happening on the page, the illustrations might indicate that. But you might find your child might say, oh, he's excited. And you're like, what? So can you and invite that conversation? Tell me a little bit more about that. Why do you see that? And I think by stating that now, we can understand, is there some confusion that they might have in their emotions? It allows us the opportunity to check in. So the second page just says, Peter's mom hugged him and said, I know you are feeling blank, and that's okay. Because one of the things we need to understand is that all feelings are okay. It's the matter of how are we managing them and how are we expressing them. But you can't fight and say, I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to be sad. No, you're feeling sad. It's okay. You're feeling anxious. That's okay. Yeah. And so then it goes on. Going to a new school may be scary at first, but each day can be a new adventure. You will see Curtis. He's in your class. And maybe the two of you can hang out together on your first day of school. Now let's walk to the bus stop together. And, it invites ways too for strategies. Sometimes as families, we're so quick to push the child out the door. Could you just get to school, get to school, get to school? But the idea is
mimosa on tap.
Yeah. And maybe it's the idea that we need to, yes, the tap, sorry. Maybe the idea is maybe we need to be with the child in the moment. I noticed, can you tell me more about how you're feeling? And giving them the opportunity to share and be with them in that space, right? So Peter's mom
in a neutral zone, right? Not
ready
in a neutral zone, when you're like in that space. In a neutral zone. In other words, adapt to what they're feeling. Like it's not always a time to correct and crush their little belief systems, and it's a time to help inform the understanding of the language, right? And that's what I love about the book.
That they're experiencing, what is happening within the book. It's inviting conversation. One of the things that's unique things, Ms. J, about our children's books, and she's right, we have quite a few. And it's really about, the reason that we have so many is we also didn't just keep them into the English language. So I know you have a universal audience. So our books are also found in Spanish as well as in French. And we had some wonderful interpreters to help us with that, to make sure that it was accurate. And it was really important for us to make sure that we had a conversation that is universal and not just for those that are English speaking. We realize the challenges of emotional and social development, even conversations, of melanin and the fact that we have melanin in our skin. Even the idea of grief and loss, which are also
Mhm.
found within our textbooks, isn't just something that happens in English speaking homes. It also happens in other homes as well. And we wanted people to be able to have the conversations in ways that they found comfortable, which is usually in their first language. So why not? And
Why
I
not,
know even though
right?
our books are stated for children 3 to 7, I wanted to also say it's okay to show these books to children when they're younger because books grow with you. Books
Mhm.
don't just stop. And the more that you repeat the conversations with children, the more comfortable they're going to feel and the more emotional, intellectual they're going to be by being able to use these resources to build their empathy, to
Yes.
build their compassion, to build their sense of kindness,
To
right?
build
And
a
to be,
language,
yeah,
to build
yes,
a
and the
language, to be
language,
able
like
to
language just
communicate. Yeah.
naturally comes with it.
Yeah.
Actually, and I know I'm getting a little excited because I'm going back into research, but reading is
She
one
said,
of the ways
she said she's
that,
getting excited. She's going back into research, everybody.
yeah, so
That's a Sunday night.
reading is actually, I could get the research study, but we don't have
Yeah.
time for that. But reading actually is one of the ways that tap into all of the areas of the brain. When we think about reading, and for example, if I said the word bird, some of you are going to say, okay, bird is spelled BIRD. So that goes into another part of the brain. And then the frontal lobes and so forth. You're picturing a bird. And some
Right.
people might picture a blue jay, which is here in Canada. And some people might think about a peacock or anything else, right? So it tunes into all areas and it helps to
Mm.
build the neurons and synapses so that it makes it stronger. Reading is one of the few things that touches all areas of the brain.
See, you heard it right here, people. Don't say I don't bring you the juice, honey. These are the resources I'm talking about. Let's get to the board here. Jenny from Johannesburg wants to say great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny, again, tap in to www.strengthenhands.com and check out Cameile. She's just getting started. We also have here another one from Keisha from Ajax, who said going through to all of the angst requires a lot of patience. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it does. We especially if you work in human services, you kind of get used to it, where you're consistently dealing with. But as sometimes if you're just a parent or you're only dealing with your immediate realm, it does take a lot of patience. And we encourage all of you to have patience because why? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. We want to be understood. We want to be heard. A child is no different.
Different.
It's no different. And if we're trying to reduce things such as mental health or barriers to communication or interpersonal strengths, these conversation is very vital at their age, right? As they're learning, like there's parents who are teaching their children a second language, right?
Yes.
As they get, and it starts when they're babies. You're talking to them about, you're saying words, you're attributing. Social and emotional is the same thing, and if you're not strong at it, strengthen your own. There's
Yes.
one thing that I always encourage is that, and I always say this: your knowledge, skill, and your capacity shifts your trajectory, right? The more you know, the more you're implementing. You're not only just talking to your children, but they're seeing it. And we just kind of spoke to that. And last from Athens, Pietro, thank you for checking in. This is your first time watching. We hope you'll be back because we have so much to share each week right here on Love the Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. So wherever you are in this world, we are creating a platform for you to weigh in. If there's something you want to say, if you want to be on the show, please feel free to contact us right here at the number 437-778-3299 on WhatsApp, or you can email us at infolovebay@gmail.com. Now, we are almost to the end of this segment, but there's still some minutes where we can grab some gems from Cameile. So let's jump back into the conversation. You showed us one of the books. You showed us the reading it. If you can see simple language, clear concepts, and thanks, Miss Headley. Informative and encouraging conversation. Wonderful. There's so many educators out there. I urge you to tap into these gems. And, especially we talk about our culture, and I'm always big on that, where we talk about our Caribbean culture, or if we're talking from a diasporic perspective, whatever lens is, people are people. And that's why I love having these human conversations, because people are people. And guess what? They start right there in the womb and they come out with their own little installed personalities. They say it's amazing the way we are created, that every single person could be different. We might be part of a market segmentation, right? But each person has their own based on their knowledge and experience. So in coming down towards a little bit more of that social interaction piece, what are some of the things that a child, or a parent or a teacher or facilitator can see when it comes to the interaction of children in a group?
So I think it's really important, like I said earlier on, to really recognize that there's different temperaments. So in terms of how children would react to a situation, let's not make assumptions, but invite opportunities where children can be themselves, their authentic selves, and invited in. I think what the thing is, when you're a parent or an educator, you actually have a level of showcasing or modeling what that looks like. So if you want the children to be open, are you open? How do you demonstrate that to them? If you want them to be inviting and involved with other friends, how are you inviting them to do that? Right? I think we have to be a bit accountable. As much as it was said about being patient, yes, but it's also about being kind. And are we showing favoritism in our dialogue, in our communication? Even as parents, we have to be mindful of that to a certain degree. And if we're showing that kind of favoritism, then there might build resentment and hostility. So we also have to be open to showcase a level of what children don't know empathy, but they'll know it through you. Yes. Children don't know how to make friends. Like, they're not born with that. Children aren't born with language. Children are not born with language. They can't speak when they're born, unless there's something I don't know. So the thing is, they learn through you, and you're modeling it, and they're picking it up through you. And children are probably the best observationalists in the world in terms of being able to pick up and showcase.
Yep, and especially the ones you want to discipline them, and then you're like, wait a minute, they got that from me.
Yes, and recognize those temperaments and hereditary type of things come from. I mean, earlier on I said my son is adopted, but there's things that he does, and I'm like, oh, that's me.
If you want to know who you are, watch your kids, right? I remember, I'll never forget, I heard my eldest son talking to his brother. And he was giving him such a stern talking to. You should not touch my toys because, and he went out. And I'm like, who are you talking? And then I stopped myself, because 5 minutes later, who's talking like that? You shouldn't be over here touching this thing that I put over. Right? Yo, I had to catch myself in a moment, look in the mirror and say, close your mouth. Do not discipline this child, and I had to flip the script. I had to come with a better demeanor. But that's how my parents spoke to us.
Yes.
Right? That's how it. So when we talk about break the cycle, we're not always talking about negative stuff. Sometimes it's just the way we were raised, that we automatically. And so, that's why I encourage people, broaden your horizons, people. Not everything you knew growing up is the right thing or the most effective thing, right?
Yeah. And I think, Miss J, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is you do based on what you know.
Yes.
And so be kind to yourself, because more often than not, you are doing the greatest thing, right? Yes. But it doesn't mean, it's just like cake. Cake is nice, but every now and then, isn't it nice to have a little sprinkle of icing? So the idea is, if you know better, you're accountable to do better. Give it a try. It's okay. Children are resilient. They'll bounce back. And more likely than not, you're going to have another time to be able to do it and do it better the next time. My real goal is just try your best. Be there in the moment with your child. When they're either doing really well, celebrate with them. And when they need some nurturing and encouragement, be there for that too. And do the best you can. If my tools and resources in terms of the books and so on are able to help you with that, I mean, there's reflection questions at the back, there's activities in the book, there's coloring pages in the book, so that children could really feel connected to the resource that's there, so they can look back at it. But at the same time, recognize, be kind to yourself, be patient, but also be kind to yourself. Self-care is the best thing you got. And if you're all, you know, edging on yourself, you're not being good to anybody. So you need to be good to you so you can be better with everybody else.
What a better way to close this show. You heard it right here. I don't even have to ask her for closing words. That was on point. I want to thank you, Miss Henry, for coming out. If you're joining the show here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, I'm your host, Miss J, and today we talked about a child's silent angst, and we had this amazing woman, Miss Cameile Henry, come out of Strengthen Hands to teach us how we can recognize if our children are going through some anxious moments in life, but more importantly, not giving them a pound of cure, but an ounce of prevention. And so, as they say, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Well, we wrap up this segment. We want to say thanks again. Please check out Miss Cameile Harris on her website, www.strengthenhands.com. Follow her on IG at Strengthen Hands. She is a metamorphosis of beauty when it comes to this topic. I love having the conversations and listening to her talk about it. And I knew she needed a global platform to be on. To all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in here each Sunday. If you are, please continue to come back. I continue to look for things that impact us locally and globally, bringing to you resources to help you build your knowledge, skill, and capacity. Why? Because when you shift your mindset, you shift your trajectory. My name is Ms. J. I'm the host of Community Conversations here on Afrobeat, Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And next week, we will be back with another guest, another topic, and another chance to make change. Keep the conversation going because it impacts all of our communities. Have a wonderful night, and I'm signing off. As always, let's fly.